Well, hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to the Reforming Nerdom podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jordan Cecile, and I am joined by a full crew today. First and foremost, the one and only P. Nate, aka Pastor Nate, aka Nathaniel P. Wright. Nate, how are you?
It's great to be back. Yeah, I'm doing well, busy with good stuff, and ready for another great episode with you boys.
Excellent. Well, we're happy to have you, and we are joined by the one and only Ben of the Cloth, aka Benjamin, aka Pastor Ben Emery. Ben, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Now, I don't know how I feel about Nate being the first and foremost.
Oh,
But I don't know. I'll let it slide.
we can. You know what? I'll let you guys have like an arm wrestling match, or like a thumb war, or
I guess
something like that.
technically Ben is still the champion of high score, so
Yeah, for real.
I
Yeah,
am catching him in that regard.
and for our listeners
And
who,
like many other regards, if we're going to be honest.
well, and for our listeners who are wondering, we haven't done high score in a bit because I was actually a friend, one of our listeners, our Patreon subscribers and Discord members, pointed out just how they made some suggestions for improving it.
Yeah.
So it's
We've
kind
got
of a
some
work in
tweaks
progress,
coming.
where we want to make it a little bit more fair, because I think that is one of the things, is some of the questions week to week, it is hard to keep it as a level playing field, and so we're working on that.
Listen,
So we're just
listen, people are just trying to figure out any way possible to topple me from my throne.
Yes.
That's what's happening.
that's like 80 to 90% of our motivation in
Yeah.
this is just Ben, because what was it that you beat us at poker that one night, and I'm still not over that.
Jordan, you and I ended up in heads up.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was really, I don't even know how that happened.
Yeah.
I have no idea how I got there. I was useless all night, then all of a sudden. And you were just like slow and steady, just kind of doing your thing, showed up late, and you're just like, okay. So anyways, maybe we'll have to do that one time, maybe a Discord poker night sometime, but Ben will not be allowed to play.
That's a great idea. No, Ben can play. We got to show that he's not as smooth a poker player as he thinks he is.
Yeah.
That was just to
Bring him
rope
down.
him in. Stakes are
Yeah.
higher next time.
Rope a dope.
Yeah. So I'm curious, fellas, how, I mean, it's been a little bit since the three of us have just been here. We don't, we had a little bit of a pivot in our topic today, because something that kind of came up, and one of our guests that was supposed to come, we had to pivot that around, or shift that around a little bit, which is totally cool. But we haven't really just had a chance to just kind of chat and see where you guys are at. So just curious, how are you guys nerding out right now? What kind of nerdy stuff are you guys in the midst of?
Well, I was just telling you guys actually right before we came on. Maybe it was it last episode? Anyway, we were talking again about the Star Wars card game that I've been playing with my kids, and Jordan trying to convince you to get roped in as well. So Thatcher, who's my second oldest boy, so he's what is he? Almost 7. Anyway, me and him were going through our cards, sorting them all out, sorting out the colors and everything. And we're going to make Jordan a couple little starter decks so he can learn and play with his kids. And then I can beat him at that too. So that's what we've been up to lately.
You know, it was one of the more emasculating things, Ben, and I share this on the show because I'm secure. I'm comfortable, but it hurt. Where I was joking, maybe I've said this before, I don't think I have, but my Melissa and I were just joking around. We're trying to think of like segments for the show, and one of them was us debating who would win in the Hunger Games, and she was just like, "Oh well, like Ben," and it was like,
Like, not even a question.
it's like, what in the world?
Wait a minute. I agree, but I'd be curious to know what her rationale
See,
for that is.
My strategy would simply be, I would try, if anybody does know the Hunger Games well, where it's just like they have that, what is it, the cornucopia thing? Are you guys familiar with the Hunger Games?
Like so
well?
vaguely, I did
Okay,
watch the
but it's like that's where like all the
first
weapons
movie.
are.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
that's where
right.
all like the weapons are in the middle, and some people just like peace out and go hide for days and just try to not die.
Yeah.
I would be that guy running full tilt to grab the heaviest thing, and I would just try to bludgeon both of you
Yeah.
because that's all I've got. And Ben would be out there like whittling things.
I was just
and
gonna say,
tying
and while you're
knots.
running for the weapons, Ben will have already whittled 3 arrows and stuck 2 of them in your back.
Yeah. Yeah. Dug a hole with spikes at the bottom.
Yeah.
Well, and then we also had the conversation of which of our wives would win, and Mel also, without hesitating, said Colleen.
Also true.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's good. We speak like that kind of segues into one way that I've been nerding out, although I wanted to come back to a question with Ben, is actually with Ben jamming over there and our lovely wives, is
Oh, yeah.
one of our sort of guilty pleasures, and we found this out early on that we're kindred spirits in this, is we still watch Survivor. And even though it got dark there for a while with a lot of the tranny stuff that they were pushing, I feel like, I mean, there's always a gay character, but generally they don't do all that well. They don't really push it as much anymore. So anyway, the last few seasons we've been back and playing. So and by playing, what I mean is that the 4 of us, Ben and myself and our wives, we do a fantasy draft where we draft the characters. And
They're real people. They're not actually characters.
well,
per se.
very, very true. And then we have a point system where you get like 1 point for every tribal council you survive, and points for winning immunity and all that kind of stuff. So all that to say, not that I'm trying to pump Ben up too much, but they did beat us last time, and Ben was the winner. And so we had to serve them dinner for our next draft. So this is season 2. Emery's took down season 1, and so we had to get them Chinese. We ate Chinese while we watched the first episode of the new one, and then did our draft. So we've been nerding out watching Survivor.
Yeah. I'm not feeling as confident about my season 2 team. I'm not gonna lie.
Episode 2 is a little rough for you.
I think I respect you. I have a pretty high level of respect for both of you, but I do not get this. I when we saw that it was on, I was like, you know what? These guys are generally pretty smart guys. You know what, Mel? We're gonna try. We're gonna sit down. We watched like 20 minutes of the first episode. It's like, what in the world? And I guess the fantasy angle, sure, that makes it like something. I couldn't. I can't. I don't get it. I don't understand you guys. But it's like, kudos. That's your thing. That's fine.
Yeah,
'Cause
I mean,
honestly,
like, to be fair, I don't think I'd ever watch it if my wife didn't want to watch it. Like, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but it's definitely something I can stand enough that we can watch together. And then
See,
also have a side bet with another dude
yeah.
going at the same time.
It's like the Seinfeld episode when George is trying to sell NBC on picking up the pilot, and he's just like, what did you do today? He's like, I got dressed and I came to work. See, that's an episode. Just like, wait, there's gonna be a reading on the show. There's gonna be work on the show. He's like, why am I watching this? Because it's on TV. That's just why it's on.
See, I wanted to watch it because after watching Beast Games, I all of a sudden was like,
Into, like, the reality
TV
show.
game show
Yeah.
type thing, and I was kind of like hungry for more, and then I couldn't do it because I mean Beast Games was ridiculous. Like, you guys watch Beast Games, right?
I never did.
did.
I still haven't finished it, but I have. I mean, I'm in it.
Yeah.
So obviously, like the grand scale, like I don't know what the budget was for that. That must have been $100 million budget. Like that.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Like, he must have lost a ton of money doing that.
He lost, I believe, tens of millions. He lost.
Like, just throwing away money, literally throwing away money.
So,
Yeah.
but I guess part of my thought was while I was watching it is the grand scale of it was pretty cool. I find him very annoying, but the other thing about it was the games. There were some that were cool, right? Like the one where the train would either take like this group out or this group out, and they had to make choices like that. I didn't mind some of that, but a lot of it was just random luck. A lot of it was they tried to do psychological stuff, which I thought kind of missed the mark a lot. The thing I like about Survivor is like the challenges are pretty epic, and you have to be physical, you have to have balance, you have to be able to solve puzzles. Like those are pretty epic, and doing some of those challenges would be awesome.
In that, is that or one of the things that I really disliked about Beast Games, because it was just such an indictment against our pathetic culture, was all these people who were just like, "Oh, I love you, man. Like, oh, I'll sacrifice myself for you, man." And it's just like one of the, I mean, spoilers for Beast Games, but one of the very first things in the first episode is like he had all these people lined up in like rows. I forget how many.
Yeah.
It was like 12 rows
I think it was
wide by
100.
like
Yeah.
100, like
Yeah,
100
50
deep or
people or 100
something.
people at a time.
Yeah, it was a lot of people, and there was like, oh, the first 4 rows that, or the last 4 rows.
Well, it was like
no,
the
first
first
4
4
rows
rows that sacrifice
that had a person sacrifice themselves for the entire row, and it's like,
gets to move on.
why? And people are acting like, "Oh, I'll do it, guys. I'll do it for you."
Yeah,
It's
it's
like, well,
just
why
like
are you here if
exact
you're just
yeah.
gonna like you're trying to win $5 million? Why are you? And then like later in the show, people are talking about how they love each other, and it's just, you don't love them. Get out of here. Like, this is a game. Like, the one guy takes a whole bunch of money and everybody's mad at him. It's like, you are literally here to win $5 million. Like, why are we? Anyways, so
That
is
part was actually quite
Survivor like
funny,
that?
because in that the one that you're talking about is kind of close to the end. So again, spoiler alert, when it's just like, he could take however much, and they're like, oh, we should all just take $100,000 and it'll be fine, right? And so he comes up second or third, or whatever, and he's just like, well, I'm in a lot of debt. He's like, so to pay off my house, and he's adding it all up in his head. And he's like, the guy's like, how much do you need? He's like, $530,000, and they're like, wow, are you really gonna take that? And he's like, all right, 680. It's just like, what? Which is hilarious. It's like,
Well,
if I
see,
pay off everything,
he probably calculated how much tax was gonna be taken from his
Maybe.
530, and then yeah.
Well, it was like something that came in the news over that, because the grant, well, okay, spoilers, because this is spoilers, but like the grand prize ends up exceeding the original advertised thing, and then so people were then saying like, oh wow, the guy's only keeping half of it, and trying to make it seem as if it's like a Jimmy problem, as if like Mr. Beast is like somehow, and Jimmy's like, I'm just transferring $10 million into your bank account. Like, literally, it's not me who's like, the government is taking half of your money, because and so it's one of those things where like, that's crazy when you think of winning that sum of money, and then the government is just like, well, that's nice of you to
Yoink.
just
Yeah.
give me half of it.
I know, it's ridiculous.
So is that kind of thing though in Survivor as well? Like, do they have that? Do people play out, like, talk about each other like, oh, I love you, man, I'm never, like, is that kind of
Sometimes,
pathetic?
but
You'll
more
you'll
often
get
than
the
not.
occasional like, you're my, we're going to the end together or whatever. Like, I'll never vote you out, and then invariably, at least half the time, they just do, and then
Yeah.
They just
like,
blindside them big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if it was $5 million, like, I'd vote you guys out, no problem.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I'll give you a bit. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't respect you if you didn't.
yeah, come on, like, let's be men about this,
Yeah.
right? Like, we're trying to win a giant sum of money. That's yeah. Well, anyways, kudos to you guys for doing that. I mean, you guys just needed another fantasy thing. I get it.
Yeah,
I
and then we
understand.
just drafted our fantasy baseball league,
We did.
like 8 hours or
Yeah.
12 hours ago or whatever.
And apparently AI thinks Jordan's team's the best.
Oh, get out of here! I didn't see
The
that.
best. You didn't see that?
No.
Oh yeah. No, I took everybody's roster. I put it in ChatGPT, and I was like, okay, give me a rankings, like power rankings for the
Interesting.
season. And I was the unanimous favorite.
Oh, I
It
don't
was
like this.
By unanimous, he means the one demon he asked to rank
Yeah.
us.
Also, I did see somebody ask ChatGPT
Unanimous.
who the next like 50 winners of the NBA championship was going to be, and some of them were like NHL teams. So
That's no.
yeah.
No, this is legit. Wookie bets first off, I love that name, and I will be honest, I asked ChatGPT for awesome nerd names, and Wookie bets is mine. For those who don't know,
they were
Mookie
supposed to
Betts.
be
No,
Lord of
that
the
was-
Rings themed.
That came after I had
Jeepers, you
already chosen
guys.
Wookie Betts, and I was like, I'm not changing Wookie Betts
Yeah.
because that is actually
That's a
too
good
good.
name.
It is, right? But yeah, what did it say here about me? Why number 1? I have a balance of power, speed, and pitching makes this the best all-around roster. Now, everybody, Nate's team is
Which
in
I haven't
third.
named yet. That's not going to be the
Yeah,
end.
I won't. Yeah, it's just a generic one, but it says of Nate's team. What does it say? Your strengths. You have Juan Soto, Julio Rodriguez, Matt Olson, MVP bats, young talent. Your weaknesses, you have DeGrom, who
Will pitch 13 innings.
could potentially be a problem. But why number 3? A power-packed offense, but pitching depth could be tested. And then Benjamin is
I'm not happy with my team. I'm not gonna
let's
lie.
just keep
Just all the way down,
going.
probably.
You're 8th of 12.
Yeah,
8th of 12.
we'll fix
You
that.
lack power, depth, few standout outfielders.
It's just like, what are all the things that baseball players need? Speed, power, pitching. He's got none of those things.
You don't really have those things. So
He drafted NBA players.
Where
and
where is Josiah's team? Because Josiah literally picked at least a half a dozen of the players I had lined up to pick, like every single time he came up to pick.
yeah, he's projected. He's 5th in the power rankings right now.
So
Yeah, that kept happening to
hate
me
that
later
guy.
on as well. It was brutal. They just kept taking, like, it was pitchers particularly that I kept getting robbed of. But I did get Otani, and most people weren't. I don't know if everybody
like
realized
the
that
Ohtani
he's
pitcher?
back.
Yeah.
The pitcher, which is interesting because he's like 2 separate players.
I didn't
in
realize
our
that
league.
he was like a separate guy until
Yeah.
this draft happened. I didn't know that you
you know
drafted
you're
him
a good ball
separately.
player when you break fantasy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They actually had to come up with, like, this is the first
a
player
new
ever
rule.
in fantasy
Yeah.
baseball that has had that. So, I mean, he's back in May. So
Yeah.
I'll add him to my IR. I'll pick up another guy until then. It's like, whatever. So then I'll have a top 5 Dodger in my lineup as well. So,
I just think they're gonna baby him like crazy though.
yeah, he's not going to get I don't think
He's
going
gonna
to get
pitch
full
like
starts.
he's gonna pitch like 3 or 4 innings a game.
Probably to start.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So thank you, AI. I couldn't agree more with the outcome of the power rankings. So, anyways, well, fellas, why don't we got a couple news stories that I was wanting us to go through, and before we get into our topic of the show, which we'll get to in just a little bit, but have you guys been following, or have you seen any of the results of the Snow White movie that just came out?
A little bit.
Apparently everybody hates it, and even though we were hard on it in our predictions, it's worse than anybody could have possibly imagined.
Yeah.
See, here's the problem: is you guys weren't very hard on it. You guys were all maybe not personally positive, but most of you thought it was going to get well reviewed.
I'm honestly dumbfounded that the reviews are as negative as they are, and from the sources or from the outlets that are saying these things. So, so this is got an article here, written by Pamela McClintock at the Hollywood Reporter, and this is titled "Box Office: Snow White limps to alarming 43 million domestic opening, 87.3 million globally." And in the article, it says, Walt Disney Studios' new Snow White remake is off to a rocky start. Not only is the film projected to have the lowest opening weekend of any Disney live-action remake, but it's also being hammered by critics. Rolling Stone's David Fear, like Rolling Stones. We're Rolling Stone. Like, we're talking like lib, woke news outlets. Rolling Stones. Rolling Stone's David Fear quipped, "The movie does earn points as a bedtime story, however, because it will definitely put you to sleep." The film, a retelling of the 1937 animated classic, currently holds a 44% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, while the audience score is a more generous 74%. But mainstream critics have been brutal. The New York Times film critic described it as neither good enough to admire nor bad enough to joyfully skewer. Its mediocrity is among its biggest bummers. Kyle Smith of the Wall Street Journal, gloss prevails over heart in nearly every scene and plot beats feel contrived. Boston Globe, I had high hopes that Snow White would make me happy. Instead, this dopey remake makes me sleepy and grumpy.
Ooh,
the Associated Press, presumably one of the reasons to bring actors into remakes of animated classics would be to add a warm-blooded pulse to these characters. Zegler manages that, but everyone else in Snow White, mortal or CGI, is as stiff as could be. And then lastly, I'll pull from here. Vanity Fair's Richard Lawson remarked, what's that? This Snow White is not a made-for-TV movie shot in Burbank, but instead a theatrically released film that costs upward of $250 million to make? Oh dear. And then, according to Deadline, Snow White is projected to earn around $43 million on its opening weekend, underperforming even compared to 2019's Dumbo, which opened at $46 million, with a projected a production budget of 270 million compared to Dumbo's 170. Snow White may become Disney's biggest live action box office bomb yet. And this film's troubled production may have contributed to its poor reception over the past 3 years. It faced delays, controversies over its depiction of the dwarfs, and backlash from star Rachel Zegler's criticism of the original film's traditional themes and her polarizing public statements.
Yeah. I mean, like I said in our Rotten Tomato episode, I just like the amount of bad press and the length of time that the bad press has gone on, like you said, like 3 years of listening to this chick go on about whatever nonsense she has to say every time a camera's in front of her. And like the dwarf, they had the dwarfs originally as just a bunch of weirdly dressed dudes who
Yep.
like
Racially diverse,
yeah,
racially diverse as
racially
well.
diverse.
Yep.
Like there was no way back from that.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting, I think. So our family actually watched the original not that long ago. They'd never seen it before. And it's actually just a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
Like
The
the
witch
original
is super creepy.
yeah. The-
Yeah. The dwarfs are funny.
The dwarves are they're endearing. It's I mean the music's a little bit my kids didn't love the music so much, but because it's very like it was in,
Ethereal.
38, yeah.
Yeah.
So but I think sometimes when you remember how good the original was, and then you go to look at it, like, you're remaking something that's not just considered a classic. Like it's probably considered one of the best animated films ever made. Right? It's not like remaking. It's not like doing a live action Lion King. Lion King was fantastic, like the original cartoon, but it was that was made in the 90s, right? We're talking about remaking a classic from 38. And honestly, I think I think the actress is who just tanked this.
Yeah.
You have to if you're gonna redo a live action and you're gonna have somebody who is gonna play a beloved Disney princess, they have to be likable. And this
Yeah, well,
chick
that's
is
the thing.
the
I don't
least
even
likable.
I don't even think it's her performance because, well, I mean, I can't even speak to it because I've never seen it. I probably never will. But it's just her utter unlikability that kills this movie.
It's the same thing as Brie Larson with Captain Marvel.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah,
Fans
you're
just
absolutely
can't
right.
stand her, right? They can't stand her. And but again, like this kind of brings up that conversation we had in that episode. And Ben, I can't remember where you landed on with a live action remake. You want it to be different, or do you want it to be like
I
shot
wanted
for
to.
shot?
I know. I wanted
remember.
to. It was Parker was like wants a preferred like a shot for shot. I'd like it to be a little different. Otherwise, I'm just like, I'll just go watch the cartoon.
Yeah, that was right.
I would like it to have some sort of like give me a reason to come see this and not just put the old one back on. But you can't like it's a fine, and that's why it's hard. It's a super fine line of doing something fun and unique while staying faithful to the original, which is it's really hard to do.
And I think that's the point that this misses is it's not even trying to remain faithful to the original.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, we're adapting it because it's live action. We have more flexibility. We don't, there's limitations to animation back in the 40s whenever, was it the 40s?
38.
30s? Yeah. And this was the very first full length animated feature film.
Like this,
right?
this is Disney.
Yeah. But like this is like they're fundamentally changing the stories. Like she's not a princess that needs to be rescued. Like that's
of course
just not like foreign to the story, right? And she's like becoming this strong, independent woman. It's like, well, okay, like this isn't Snow White anymore. Like we're not.
Yeah.
You're not actually
Just
telling
tell
the
a
same
different story, and we won't go see that.
Yeah. Well, and because I mean, part of it as well. I mean, I know a lot of people, myself included, at times. I don't appreciate race swapping. If it there's some times where you don't actually notice and you don't care, and it's not a big deal. Like MJ in the new Spider-Man movies, I don't think anybody actually had an issue with Zendaya being MJ. I think she actually was good. It didn't bother. I don't remember hearing the level of complaints that we now have. But I mean, like she's obviously not. She's Puerto Rican, right? This Rachel Zegler, however you pronounce it.
She's not
but then
Snow White.
she's not Snow White, which they tried to make even in this. They said the Snow White came from something about a blizzard that happened, and it's not about her like Snow White skin. And again, so it's not even just about like the dwarfs would have been far more egregious
Yeah.
in what they were trying to do. So like they did at least fix that. And what just makes me think, what comes to mind is in the new Harry Potter TV show they just cast. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Oh my
Like
goodness.
a black guy as Snape, and it's just. And so I watched a video, and it was like a influencer guy, a black guy, and he was talking about it, and he was like, "This doesn't make me as a black man happy because I know your motives are not just to elevate black characters; it's just to piss off white people.
Right.
Like that's all." And he knows it, and he's
Yeah.
like, "You're not. This isn't actually doing anything to make me happy
Well,
because you're."
that's why I think the Zendaya, whatever her name is, in Spider-Man, like you said, like nobody, it kind of just happened and nobody made a big deal of it. Nobody said anything. Is like it wasn't the point. Like the race swapping wasn't the point. Like it really
Yeah.
did feel like we just feel like she's the best actress for what this character we want it to be.
Mhm.
Where most of them, it's like, yeah, we just wanted a black person to
Yeah.
do this instead of a white person.
Yeah.
It's Matt
Well,
Chandler saying, "Give me the black 7."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. Well, because like, another good example, I know we talked about it, I don't know which episode, but, was it Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin? Yeah, it would have been
I was
in
fine
right?
with that.
And nobody
He's
had an issue with that,
fantastic, actually.
and that was probably, what, 15 years
He
ago?
was like the
At
only
least?
good thing about that movie.
Yeah. And so, anyways, like, this it's just so you'd think that people would be learning their lesson over this stuff, which then now is our segue into our next article, which this was actually shared to us by somebody in our Discord. And this was from Variety. And it's the title of this article is Disney, excuse me, Disney shareholders overwhelmingly reject proposal to sever ties with LGBTQ rights group at annual meeting. And this article was, I believe it was from early February, but in it, it says on Thursday, Disney shareholders voted down a proposal calling for the company to cease its participation in the Human Rights Campaign's HRC Corporate Equity Index, the CEI. The proposal was submitted by the National Center for Public Policy Research through its Free Enterprise Project, which described itself as opposing the woke takeover of American corporate life. The proposal argued that Disney's involvement in HRC's CEI alienates customers and investors and urged the company to return to neutral. It criticized Disney's perfect CEI score, claiming it was achieved by adhering to partisan, divisive, and increasingly radical criteria. In December of 2023, Disney announced that it had again received a perfect score on the CEI, highlighting its commitment to workplace inclusion and support for the broader LGBTQIA+ community. Every time I say that, it is just
It's a lot of letters.
nauseating
Yeah.
to just even have to. Anyways, the proposal took particular aim at HRC and other advocacy groups like GLSEN, the Trevor Project, and GLAAD, accusing them of promoting gender confusion in children and undermining religious freedoms. It also cited Disney's opposition to Florida's Parental Rights Education Act, dubbed by critics as the Don't Say Gay law, as an example of the company's alleged activism. Now, this is the crazy thing. Disney's board recommended voting against the proposal, and shareholders agreed. Only 1% of votes were cast in favor, according to preliminary results. In a statement, the board said Disney's existing policies on transparency, ESG reporting, workplace equity, and human rights made the proposal unnecessary. So you would think that Disney shareholders, seeing that like all of these woke things are leading to movies not making money, tanking at the box office, being panned by woke, even very woke liberal critics, and they're still like, no, keep it.
Yeah. So here's a problem with this is that like I'm all for I am 100% in favor of investor activism, right? Like it doesn't actually, I can't remember what the number is, but I think it's only like if you're in for a couple $1,000s in a privately uh or not a private, sorry, a publicly traded company, you get a vote, right? The problem is, why would you ever be invested in Disney? All they do is
Yeah.
lose money.
Hmm.
So, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not ever going to get a vote because I'm never going to put a couple thousand of my dollars into investing in Disney because they're a terribly run company. So it's sort of a circular, right? Like the companies that are gonna be uh in that are gonna have active conservative investors, right? Are companies that are good at making money.
I was just surprised to see the percentage because I'm assuming BlackRock owns a large percentage. BlackRock and other
Likely.
gigantic
Yeah.
hedge funds own large percentages, but they don't own 99%.
No.
So it was surprising to see that even just run of the mill.
Yeah.
Now again, like
But
I'd be
also
curious if it's
a lot of people just don't even know that that's a thing, right? Like most
well,
people
and
that
that's
are
it.
invested in these companies don't even know that they have a vote.
And that's what I was just gonna say, like, I wonder if that's the percentage who voted,
Yeah,
if
it
that
would
was
be.
or
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, like, not many people would or even take the time to vote. Because I mean, I have some investments, and I get a thing in the mail once a year and saying, "Oh, like, it's our annual meeting, make sure to vote," and it's like, I have so little invested in this one particular thing where it's like,
Well, and the thing,
meh.
like most of them are like, we're voting on, adding this particular guy to the board of directors or whatever. Like, I don't know any
Yeah,
of these people
yeah.
or
I
anything
don't
like
have
that.
enough skin in the
But if
game
but if
to
all of a
worry
sudden
about
one of
it.
those letters in the mail was like, we're voting to remove DEI, I'd be like, give me 10 votes.
What one of the things that's tough for Disney is that, um, like, if they were only making these movies and relying on their entertainment division to make them money, I think there'd be more outcry and people would care more about why are these movies losing money. But people who are invested in Disney are still making money because it's their experience division that makes them all their money. Their theme
Mhm.
parks and their cruises are what make them money. So Disney itself doesn't lose,
Well,
even though this is a absolute tank, right? So Snow White bombing doesn't actually hinder them as it would otherwise if they were only invested in the entertainment division. But I think like Disney has shares in ESPN, right? So they're making money on different things, which is sort of, I mean, they're using, people going to their theme parks and on their cruises to bolster their crappy movies. And so I think, at the end of the day, that's the unfortunate part. And people have the mentality of like, well, who else is there making, quality family movies? And these
Mhm.
aren't quality family movies, but I think that's the point. It's the lack of
yeah.
competition isn't driving urgency. They're not losing, market share because there's not enough people out there doing things that are competing with them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so yeah, they're down like 16% in the last year, up 3% in the past 5 years, so nowhere near even like meeting inflation. Um, so like the company's not doing well, but they're still, for people that care about investing and stuff, like they still have a price to earnings ratio that's 50% higher than the average stock. So, like, they're still even at their current price, they're still a highly overvalued stock. So that just goes to show that you're right, like, there is no competition, like, so they can lose $300 million multiple times a year on crappy movies, and people are still gonna overpay.
It just makes you wonder though how long this whole, like, activism thing is gonna be able to last. Because I mean, at the end of the day, you would think at the end of the day, it comes down to dollars and cents and people want more money in their pocket and not just, "Oh, how can we capture the most beloved brands in the world and push, woke communism through them?" Because like, that is only gonna last for so long because people don't actually like that. But
Yeah,
it just right?
and we
It
don't
just
want to get too like the sky is falling because we've also had a lot of news stories that seem to show, there are areas even of Hollywood that are turning around that are following the dollar. Um, but I think what we have to recognize is that there are people, and this is where Christians can kind of take their cues a little bit. There are people who are willing to lose money for ideological purposes.
Yeah.
And
Lots and lots of money.
Yeah, they're willing to. I mean, you were just telling us about Apple, right? Apple TV
Yeah.
losing $1 billion a year and sticking with it. It's like there is an ideological commitment to what they're doing. And I also think, like, as much as we've talked about some of the positive things that Trump's presidency has brought in, and it has, um, there are those people. We're seeing a lot of them in Canada right now, especially with the whole elbows up 51st state kind of junk, is you have a whole lot of people who hate Trump so much that they will lose money. They will see their dollar lose value. They will, personally lose because they hate him so much and they hate what he stands for, that they're committed to an ideology that will bankrupt them, that will bankrupt our country. And so it's the same in some of these countries. I just think we're being naive if we think this is all going to turn around just by people chasing the dollar. Um,
Yeah.
I I think it has to be driven by competition as well, and I just don't think Disney has proper competition.
Yep.
Agreed.
Uh,
Which
well,
is
I mean,
probably a good segue into our next topic.
I was I
I
was
th-
I was lobbing you a
I mean,
softball,
I've
Jordan.
so there it is. How about though, before we get into how we fix this, because that is what we want to talk about. What does that roadmap to actually giving Disney some competition? Why don't we just quickly hear from a word from our sponsor?
Hey, reforming Nerdom listeners. If you're the kind of nerd who fuels deep theological debates or marathon game nights with a great cup of coffee, you need to check out Cosmos Coffee Company. Cosmos Coffee Company is a Christian coffee roaster in White House, Tennessee, that provides freshly roasted coffee to customers all across the US and Canada. Whether you're diving into your next deep theology study or prepping for an all-night board game marathon, Cosmos Coffee has you covered. They have 7 great flavors, including the Pilgrim's Roast, a smooth, light roast with notes of blackberry, honeysuckle, and butterscotch, the Renewal Roast, a sweet Ethiopian blend with strawberry, agave, and peach, and for something extra nerdy, the Falcondra Roast, a medium Colombian inspired by Out of the Silent Planet with rich flavors of chocolate, brown sugar, and citrus. And because you're part of our nerdy fellowship, they are offering 30% off your first order for Reforming Nerddom listeners. Just use the code REFORMNERDDOM at checkout. So, if you want to level up your coffee game, go to cosmoscoffeecompany.com, that's Cosmos with a K, and use Reform Nerddom, no spaces, to save 30% on your first order. Cosmos Coffee Company. Coffee roasted well for his glory, for the kingdom.
All right, well, welcome back, listeners. And all right, so now, boys, we want to talk about what is it's a thing that we've been, I think, the three of us talking about just together, and kind of the whole point of this podcast is like, how do we reform nerddom? And one of the things, listeners, that we've been trying to think about over the last little bit is like, so what does that actually boots on the ground look like? So what is our kind of roadmap, if you will, or our plan to reclaim nerd culture? Like, how do we see a Disney competitor? And so I guess let's call this our 100-year plan to reclaim nerddom. So Nate, what would you say? What does that look like? What do those first steps look like for us as we're wanting to reclaim nerd culture and defeat all these woke lunatics?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, like, for those of you who have maybe come into listening to our podcast partway through, maybe Foskey or one of our guests brought you on, you haven't listened to all the other ones, I would encourage you to go back and listen to our first couple of episodes where we talk a little bit about why we think nerd culture is worth saving. It really does come down to an ideology where we believe that, we don't want to see, first of all, we don't have a theology of escapism. So we believe that the things that we build and the things that we do here on this earth will be of lasting value. The story of Scripture is one from a garden to a garden city, which speaks to the progress that God's people make here in history using the raw materials of creation and building things with it. And then it also comes from our commitment. Van Til said that culture is religion externalized. So the art that we make, including the movies and all that kind of stuff, is an outward manifestation of the inward religion of the people. And so as, we want to see the gospel transform hearts and minds, we want to see the people who are transformed to make things that reflect the truth about the world. So that's sort of the foundational piece. But what we would say is that we don't want to surrender things that we love to the enemy. So we were just talking about Disney and how Disney's been run into the ground and how they can't even tell a story about a princess being saved by a prince anymore. And that's central, right? You know, Christ is the son of the king who left his kingdom in heaven and came down to kill the dragon and get his bride. So these stories are important and we have to be able to tell them. So the question becomes, how do we compete with some of these huge media companies and art companies that make Vice City, Grand Theft Auto video games and stuff like that? How do we compete with that? I think it starts small. It starts number one with what are Christians doing right now in small ways to take some of these things back. We've talked a lot about how we would love to see, Christians making comic books and Christians making music and Christians making these kinds of things. And we know there are great people out there doing that, but what they've lacked, I think, so far is the overarching, umbrella. So when you look at what Disney does and you look at all of the various things that they do, whether it's theme parks and cruises and movies and shorts and all these kinds of things, toys, there's this entire umbrella of things that they do. And I think what Christianity has lacked so far is a cohesive plan for how to actually do things better than the world, but, thinking big and building, in Christian circles, it's actually frowned upon to, want to build things that make money and to grow, big, vast companies. And I think that's just been the wrong thought. I think that Christians have shied away from power and influence for too long. Power can be a bad thing. It can also be a good thing. Influence can be a bad thing. It can also be a good thing. It depends on the worldview and the character of the people who have it. So all that to say, I think it starts with a commitment ideologically to saying, no, we're not willing to walk away from comic books, even though comic books have gotten, over sexualized and woke and all this stuff. We want that, right? In my Christendom, I want sitcoms and I want
Yeah.
movies and
And
I
they don't
want comic
like, the
books.
comic books don't just have to be the action Bible, right?
Yeah,
Which,
that's right.
like, is fine, but that's kind of the point of what we're getting at is, like, we and not just so we kinda started this project with, the very somewhat narrow, it's still, like, insanely broad, but the somewhat narrow topic of, like, nerd culture proper in terms of superheroes and comic books and movies and that kinda stuff. But, like, you can nerd out on anything, right? And so that's kind of the idea of what we're trying to get at is, like, eventually, like, we need like, what do you like to do? What do you spend your free time on and doing, and how do you enjoy God's world? Is it around a golf and, beautiful sunshine? Or, like, then we should be having people talk about how to do that to the glory of God and, and understand what that looks like. Or is it reading a comic book, right? Like, so, that's part of what this project is about and part of what we're aiming towards as well.
Yeah, and I think, like, as we've been talking about our grand master plan, like, so even just listeners, like, so you get an idea of kind of the trajectory we're hoping that this goes. Like, we see whether it's called reforming nerdom or some other entity, we don't know what that looks like because this could possibly be years down the road. But like we actually legitimately see a something that exists that is creating these comics, like a whether it's like a publishing house that's writing stories, animation for creating movies, um, yeah, like artists for creating graphic novels or comic books or video games, whatever it is. Like I don't see, or we don't see somebody actually doing that now. Now, like we're still like so small. We like this is something that's not happening today, but like as of from what I can understand, I don't see a and correct me if I'm wrong, or listeners, if there's these companies out there, we would love to talk to them because I mean, we'd love to partner with or try to help them out. But companies that are explicitly Christian, explicitly kingdom focused, explicitly about creating good quality stuff, and isn't just focusing on, like you said, Ben, the action Bible. Because like that is what we want to see, is we want to see just great stories. Like where's the next Lord of the Rings? Where's the next Wingfeather saga? Where's the next, comic book? Like, and they're just not really being created right now. There's not like, there's no initiative that we can see. So it's, yes, like what we're hoping to do is, I mean, if it can be us that does it, great. Like that's our vision. I mean, we're all kind of dreamers and we all have the long-term view and perspective, but like for us, like we want to be able to see a company that does all of those things and is a company that all of our kids are part of, our grandkids are part of, like, and just think about the benefits and the blessing that that kind of a thing could be for, I mean, our local church community, where you think about, I mean, I don't know how to make a movie or how to make an animation thing, but I know it's a lot of people, it's jobs for a lot of people. I know whether it's like
Well,
administrative
and
or advertising.
we're also in a world now too where, like, similar to the printing press in the 1500s or whatever, it's like, um, the uh, the price of entry into that world is so much lower than it was
Mhm.
50 years ago. To
Yeah.
like we said, like there was that animated movie that won an Oscar that was made by like one dude with a few $1 million and
Yep.
some more or less free software on his computer. Which like that's unthinkable. Like he beat Disney. Like that's so it's actually possible.
Mhm. Well, and like, kudos to the guys down in Ogden, right? I think even like Haunted Cosmos, like that's extremely professionally well done podcast where they've got like they just do a great job, and it's like that was like church down in Ogden, Utah, and now they've got like this podcast. I mean, it's like a little one, but it's like they've got a large reach with. I know Brian has 3 podcasts, whether it's King's Hall, Bright Hearth, and like my wife likes listening to Bright Hearth with him and his wife, but so it's like I look at what they're doing and like they're not a big team. They're not a massive production studio, even like a Canon press that has like actual sets and they have tons of different podcasts and everything. So it's like for us, I think that's where we see like this can actually start pretty small in what we're doing and then grow into being something bigger. But it does have to start small. Like even for right now, I think why it makes sense for us to be doing this as the first phase of that plan is people just need to learn that it's okay to be talking about this stuff because like there does actually need to be some teaching on it, which I hope we're providing because most people still, or a lot of Christians still think that this is a waste of time or why would we? So it's hard to see somebody, a Christian who has the means by which they could invest like $10 million into an animation project when their theology still says, well, Jesus could come back at any moment. We just need to, all of our money needs to go into Bibles and evangelism and reaching, like, again,
And yet
all of those things
all of
are
those
good.
same people that will never in a million years do that or invest that money, even if they were the type of people that had the money to invest, still will take their kids to go see Snow White made by
Yeah.
Disney. Like, and that's it's just like the
Yeah.
the disconnect there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, so for us, like listeners, like we've got some plans, we've got some ideas that we're hoping to put into place. Like we were already in talks, um, not in the immediate future, but hopefully not in too long. But like we want to be able to see like a Christian version of Comic Con, right? Where that's a thing that we're thinking about and trying to figure out how we could make that happen. Where
So like 80% less slutty costumes,
yeah,
at least. Yeah.
at the very
Yeah.
least, and if somebody did show up, somebody would be there to clothe them,
Yes.
and,
Yeah.
you're still welcome, but put them away.
We'll get really
But
big,
yeah.
oversized shirts with Ben's face on it as the high score winner, and they're just, like,
Yeah,
swim in this, like, quadruple XL shirt that will cover you.
yeah.
It's like a
But
schmuck.
I think so, like, as like, I think it's great, for us to have these dreams and, like, yeah, we would love for this to become one of many podcasts that we do. Because I know we've talked about that before. Like, I would love to see that we have a video game podcast, talk about video games, one dedicated to movies, one dedicated to sports. Because funny enough, we've got enough guys in our lives who have said, like, hey, I would love to do a sports podcast. And, how do we talk about players and sports in the news and everything as Christian guys? And like, how do we, how do we approach professional sports and sports generally from a Christian worldview. And so I think that's great. But yeah, like we want to be able to see a publishing house. We want to see comics, video games, all those things. But I think the thing at the heart of all of that that we're seeing in a small way, just getting a taste in our Discord, is like we need to do this as like a community of Christians, of nerds who are united in this same vision. And that's been really awesome to see, where we've got some great guys in our Discord, who guys and girls, who are just really passionate about what we're doing, because it's like this is the first time that somebody in their life that they've seen have been talking about the things they like, but doing so, trying to do it in an appropriate way. And we just see how like the rallying cry, and like they're the ones sharing news stories with us, and we're talking like brainstorming different things and having these great conversations there. And like it's only actually going to happen if we band together in doing this, right?
Yeah, and I think that one book. I mean, as Christians who obviously have this theological bent where we want to see all things that God has created placed underneath His feet in victory, but also enjoyed. I would just recommend the book "The Things of Earth" by Joe Rigney. If any of our listeners, because I think one of the things that happens is, whether you're enjoying, video games or comic books or sports, how often does the warning come from the Christian in the foyer when you're talking about, the hockey game or whatever, and they're like, well, sports can really become an idol. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes, it can. And video games can
Thanks.
become an idol, and so can comic books, and all these things. You can make an idol out of anything. John Calvin says that our hearts are an idol-making factory. But that doesn't mean that we swiftly have to reject anything that could be an idol. Otherwise, we would be rejecting everything. So the theology that kind of undergirds this is the fact that God has created the world, and He wants us to take His raw material of creation and make beautiful things out of it.
Yeah.
Whether that means that you're into carpentry, whether you're into making music, whether you're into brewing beer, what we would say is that you are to enjoy the things of earth, and the things of earth are actually to amplify your view of the Lord, not diminish it. Joe Rigney is fond of saying that that there's that old hymn, "The things of earth grow strangely dim," because we're so focused on Jesus. And he says it's actually the opposite, that the things of earth grow strangely bright when we recognize and that God wants us to enjoy His good creation. So I say that simply to say, if you're that nerd who's brewing beer in your basement, find other Christians who are into the same things you are, right? If you're that nerd who has a zillion sketches of little comic books that you've made and stories you've created and characters that you've made, then share that with other Christians. Like, find people who you can do that with. And one of the things that I love about our church is I can go from like one group who, at church on Sunday, who are talking about where they're at in the Stormlight archive, and I can go over to another group and they're talking about the whiskey they're distilling and swapping samples or whatever. And you go over, like, there's so many things going on because people have been steeped in the theology of that we are to enjoy the things of earth as long as we're doing so properly. So I think, it starts with a theological shift in your mind. And then once you have that, like Jordan said, it's finding people around you that you can nerd out with over the things that you enjoy in God's good creation. And as you create that community, figuring out, how do we do this to the glory of God?
Mm-hmm.
So, I have a suggestion, which I have not. I'm just bringing this up now. So if we need to cut this out of the episode,
Hot off the press.
feel,
All right.
feel free. But what
Mute
if
button? I'm hovering over the mute button right now.
How about I don't know what time limit we put on, maybe a couple weeks, and we do a draw for every new person that comes into the Discord, because I think we're going to talk about Discord here to more or less finish off the episode.
Mhm.
Any new person who joins Discord in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know, whatever timeline we want to put on it, gets a nice new copy of The Things of Earth by Joe Rigney.
I'm down.
We'll do a draw. How's that?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
like that.
I think that's a great idea.
All right, we're keeping it
Yeah.
in the episode.
Yep. Yep. Ben will personally buy and send you a copy
And
of
sign. He
Sign.
didn't-
Oh,
he didn't offer the
100%
book.
signed. It's the only reason we're doing it.
Yeah, that's right. No, I think that's and that is a good segue into
Not
the
by Joe
Discord, 'cause
Rigney. To
no,
to
it'll
be
be signed by you. Yeah,
FYI.
just cross out his name on the front cover.
Yeah.
And just by Ben Jammin.
Benjamin.
Yeah. So, like, so listeners, like it really, like we do our vision again. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But our vision is that like we want to see our Discord become really that connecting point for so many people,
Yeah.
and like that's what
Kind
it's
of just
already
just like a
become.
launching off point, connection
Yeah,
point. Like
because like
find your people. Yeah.
that's it, and, like, there are some guys who, some people who just like chatting Lego, some who are very much they're in the video game thread, they're very much in the movies thread, there's just, like, a general funny thing with memes. I mean, Jesse from Carpe Fide is great for sending hilarious memes, and, like, it's just one of those things where I just look at it, okay, it's great. It's just, like, again, a safe place where you can be a nerd, you can have fun, but it seems like, everybody who's in there is, like, theologically, at least like or very serious about their faith, and yet they have these little passion things that they have, these little side things that maybe people might not realize, and it like so that's what we want. We want to be able to be that place that is the connecting point where again, like how awesome would it be to find somebody who is an artist and like we have a thread on there perhaps where it's like people who are animators and they can show their work, and then that can be a place where an investor goes because they know that this is a place where a Christian talent is okay, cool, like let's see what that even looks like to be able to fund a project like that. You know, I don't know what that looks like. Again, we're thinking kind of big picture long term here, but like that's our vision for it. And then it's also just like the place to have fun. Like I don't really spend a ton of time in other group chats anymore, admittedly, because like this is kind of where my attention is and I
Dude,
have more fun in
that
it.
thing blows up my phone. Like, actually,
Oh, it's there. Oh yeah, there are days where it's just like you miss 30 notifications and it's like you go back and look at it. It's like, oh, okay, this is good. It's just great. Like people are having fun. And again, it's like-minded people. It's a safe place. And again, we just had a really, just as an
safe
example, where
place,
it's
but
not
like
just,
not in the gay way.
no, but it's like you can be a nerd. Yeah. Yes. Not in this. Yeah. Anyways.
Safe safe
Um,
place, but no homo. Yeah.
yeah, no homo. But so and you know what? And we do have good conversations in there as well. Like recently somebody was just asking, like, hey, I have people in my life who really look down on me for liking this stuff. It's like, what do you guys like? How would you guys recommend I kind of navigate those conversations and those relationships? And then it led to people just giving, I think, some good, sound biblical advice and anecdotal things to sharing from their experiences. So again, it's not just, oh, hey, look at this new Lego set, which
There is
that is
that.
there, but it is also like, how can we equip each other? How can we and like we have things, I mean, the 3 of us were also busy, so we're trying to get better at, planning and scheduling and doing things, but like we have things like a trivia night that we wanna be
Yeah,
doing.
okay, so
Uh
before we just start kind of randomly, let's talk. What are so we're telling you the gateway into helping us accomplish our vision for the 100-year, how we're going to reclaim nerddom and stuff is join this Discord for
Mhm.
the proverbial price of a cup of coffee a month kind of thing.
Yep.
So, uh we want to bless you and benefit, make it something that's worth, we think it's worth the price of a cup of coffee just for, the content we put out and stuff. But as an extra blessing and extra benefit to you, what are some of the things we plan on or are currently doing for the Discord?
Yeah. So one of them is we wanna do, so we've decided on doing for our first book club, we are gonna do Princess Bride. Ben, that was your recommendation. So we just need to actually
Set a
set
date.
the
Yeah.
set the date, and so then we'll give everybody some time, read the book. Then we're gonna do a big live group chat, thing. Not group chat, sorry, like a live, uh,
Video chat
online chat
sort of. Yeah.
thing, where we're talking about it, just, talk about what we liked, what we didn't
Yeah.
like. So that's gonna be
And
a
then we'll do an
monthly.
episode for the show
Yeah, yeah,
after
yeah.
that
We'll
on the
talk about
Princess
it, but
Bride.
then that's right. And so like that'll be access to anybody who wants to join and participate in that. We also, we're in talks right now to do a monthly or maybe every couple months a trivia night where people can team up or we can do individual things. But it's just again uh, something that doesn't require people being physically in the same place because the nature of it is a number of our people in our Discord aren't local to us. We have a good contingency from our local church, which it's been really cool to see how nerdy our church is, because there's just a bunch of people who are there, and there's not even as many from our church in it that could be. We just have to get more people,
convince them.
just get them on there. But so that's another thing. And then having like a video game, challenge is finding what the best video game for it, but having things like a bracket where we have a tournament, and it is, whether it's an N64 or N64 is tough. It has to be something that most people have. So like Rocket League or something that Madden,
Is
having like an actual
streamable,
Madden
yeah.
league, or something that people can play together, get on cross console, whatever.
Street Fighter.
Ooh, I mean, that's not the worst. But anyways, like those are the kind of things that we're doing, we're planning. And
we'll be getting our Discord members into. You mentioned earlier about some of the changes we'd like to make to the high score. One of them being getting Discord members involved in the high score challenge as well. So getting you guys involved in the actual, weekly show that we put out. So yeah, just lots of ways we want to make that Discord/Patreon thing worth your while.
And like the reality is, the reason why Patreon exists is to be able to help content creators make the stuff that you want to be able to listen to, and
without
I mean,
having
if
to
this-
be under the umbrella of Disney or
that's it.
like
And
a big
we're not
corporate-
beholden to. We want to be able to create stuff that is a blessing to others. It's fun for us to do, but the reality is, it's like we need to be able to fund that. And we would love to be able to do more stuff. Like I know, Ben, you and I are going to do the Andor show watch along in a couple weeks when that comes out.
That's sometime in April. I can't remember the exact
but
date.
like we would love to be able to do more stuff. It's just we need the means to be able to do that. And so it's just one of those things that we would love for people to be able to partner with. If you like the content, you want to see more of it, you're sharing that long-term vision, then that does require an investment of some kind. And again, that's why we don't want to make it a burden to people. And that's why we think a couple bucks a month to be able to join the Discord is pretty reasonable. Eventually that might change, right? As if things grow and different tiers and levels of access and stuff like that, like we might have to adjust that. But for right now, anyways, we just want to be able to
we want to
build
make
the community.
The barrier of entry super small, but still gives us something to work with and invest into the project.
And one of the things I would say is that even if you feel like you have your people, and I know that certainly the people that have come into the Discord, that's one of the things that they've appreciated, is finding their people on there, which, like I said, is one of the major draws. But even if you feel like you found those people, but this vision of kind of taking back Nerdom, eventually, in however many years, seeing, publishing and books being written and comic books being produced, and hopefully one day, movies and
animators.
We would love to see, somebody birthed out of this community become the rival to Disney. But if you even just believe in that vision, I would say come in, because you might be a Steve Jobs, where you come in and make an idea better, right? It's just famously just stole people's ideas and made them better. So I say that to say, like, the barrier to entry is quite low right now. And part of it is because we want to find the people who can actually help us see this vision materialize. And so maybe you think this is a great idea and you'd like to be in sort of on the ground floor, like come and join our Discord and talk to us about it. We're changing high score because of some of the feedback from some of our most loyal early listeners. And so this is a malleable project.
And because they're jealous.
So I say all that just to say, like, if this vision excites you, then come and be a part of it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a long-term thing, right? Like, we're not expecting this to happen overnight, and we're committed. Like, this is something that we're very committed to as a project that we want to see grow and be successful. And I want my daughter and my kids to be the ones running this thing one day. Like, that's with your kids, right? Like, I want all of our families and even other families in our church and to be part of this thing, and we can all just look back and just think of, how crazy is it to think that it started perhaps as a podcast and then becomes something that can just be such a blessing and God glorifying way of just enjoying creation. So
absolutely.
All right, so here's what everyone needs to do. If you are not on Discord. If you're not a Patreon member, come join Patreon at the lowest possible amount, which gets you into our Discord channel. And with Discord, you get all the things that we just talked about. If you are so if you are already on Discord or not, what you need to do is help us by going on to YouTube, like videos, comment on videos, help us get a little bit more exposure, review the show on whatever, Spotify, iTunes, all the places. There's a million ways to help us make this vision a reality, and some of them literally cost you nothing but a couple clicks of the mouse. So a lot of things you can do, and then we just want to see you all join the team.
Yeah, and then
It's fun.
join us at our inevitable conference, which I want to see happen sooner than later, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse. But yeah,
I have a
just
beautiful
know that
location. I have a beautiful location.
oh, we've got a spot. Our new church is glorious for something such as this. So perhaps in the next little bit we'll get that going. So okay, well, fellas, is there anything else you want to say? Any parting words? Or we good to wrap up?
I'm okay. I'm good.
Yeah,
I made my
all right.
pitch.
All right. Well, listeners, we thank you for your time. We do thank you for giving us the time, and we just reminder to go let people know that you can watch us on YouTube, check us out on podcast services, and please, as we already said, go check us out on Discord or Patreon, where you can get access to our Discord. We'd love to have you over there. And if you have any, I guess, ideas, topics that you want to hear us discuss, just leave a comment down below. We'd love to, we're always open to feedback and suggestions, or if there's even a guest that you would like us to reach out to try to have on, we're always open to having new guests on, and
Yeah.
to enjoy meeting some new fellow nerds who it's kind of been fun to find some guys, some of our guests who might not have known we're nerds, and then all of a sudden you start talking to them and they're very nerdy. So, it'd be great if you could let us know, and or if you yourself would like to, just shoot us an email at reformingnerdom@gmail.com, or again, just
There's
leave
a test you have to
comment
pass
below.
first, but
That's right. Yes. Well, listeners.
And it's just the easy thing of beating somebody other than Ben at high score.
Oh boy. Somebody. Okay, we need to bring down Ben down a peg or two. Yeah, he won the fantasy thing. He won poker. Or like the fantasy survivor thing. He won poker.
he said it with
winning
such
high
disdain.
score. Yeah, no, it's becoming a problem. So, anyways, we'll fix that. But anyways, listeners, thank you again for your time, and until next time.
Oh, also,
stay nerdy.
apparently I won Hunger Games. So.
Oh, get out of here! Get out of here!
Only in the
All
mind
right.
of Jordan's wife.
Yes. Yeah, which I'm dealing with that. All right, listeners, take care.